Okay. Awesome. Okay. Welcome to the Highly Favored Podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Chado, and I am so excited to have the amazing author, Claire Cain, on the podcast today. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Kim. It's good to be here.
I am so excited to have you. So, one of the reasons, actually, I think my friend Ginger introduced me to you. I was reading through romance books and military romance. And she was like, "Have you heard of Claire Kane?" And I was like, "I have not." And she's just like, "I just highly recommend her style of work and her writing, and people seem to really like it." So I started reading your work and I was just like, "Oh, this is awesome. I love your writing style and your characters." And it's just thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
That's so sweet. Ginger is awesome.
And
I
she's
couldn't remember how we first connected, so I'm glad you said that.
I know, it's just like military friends, just connecting all of us. It's so great. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. Like if you ever have a thought about like, oh, maybe I should introduce my friend to this thing, do it because then it leads to these other opportunities. Surprisingly, so which is awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, one of the reasons why we wanted to do this episode and have it released this week was that you're coming to Utah.
I am. I'm super psyched.
Yeah, so we're going to
Coming
have
home.
an event. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. I'm so excited. We're going to have an event this Sunday, April 26th at the Romantics Archive in Ogden, Utah, and it'll be from 1 to 3. And so, do you wanna share more even about that event and what we're kinda doing and, like, the vibes and what we're hoping for from it?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to even go to the Romance Archives, so I am very excited to do that because Ogden is my hometown. So I'm first of all just super excited to be there. We are focusing on the veteran experience that you have and the military spouse experience that I have. We're doing a little Q&A and talking about military romance looped in there and um, books. So, yeah. And then maybe you're a better person to talk about the tie-in to the organization that we're featuring.
Yes. So a portion of book sales from the event is going to benefit a nonprofit organization called Final Salute Inc. And I'm affiliated with them because I am part of the Miss Veteran America organization. I'm a semifinalist for it. And all of our advocacy work, any tabling, events, fundraising, all of that goes to support this nonprofit. And they focus on supporting and providing resources for women veterans and their children who are potentially facing homelessness. So they have several different programs. They have the home program, safe program, job transitions. Like they truly do try to encompass the entire experience to help make those transitions more feasible. And what better way to tie in military romance, women empowerment, strong characters with helping other people? I love it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. I love that, and thank you for bringing that to the table for sure because that just makes it even better.
Yes, yeah. I think like one of the startling kind of shocking numbers as I've been like working with this organization is that there is something like potentially 55,000 homeless women veterans, and I was just shocked. I was completely floored by that. And the definition of homelessness isn't necessarily, I think, like when I started working with them at least, I thought, "Oh, this is someone literally sleeping on the street." But the definition of homelessness is so broad, especially for women, because most women aren't going to actively choose to sleep on the street, even if they are facing like housing insecurity. They're couch surfing, staying with friends. They might be sleeping in their car. And so the VA and a lot of affiliated organizations, they're really specific about asking during check-in appointments with veterans, like, "Hey, what's your living situation like? And can you talk about it?" Because they do want to provide resources. And while my military transition, while had its ups and downs, I was never faced with that. And so I can't imagine being like, okay, this is like the next course of action for me. And so if we're able to provide and help people, especially through a fun event like talking about military romance and reading and just, all the fun genres and tropes that come with romance, like I love that. I think that women can do a lot. A Circle of Women is so supportive and empowering. And so I'm excited to do that in Ogden this weekend.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Okay. All right. So we've kind of gotten the events and like the introductions out of the way. I am so ready to dive into some questions with you.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. Okay. So, how did your journey into writing begin and why did you choose military romance specifically?
I have always been a writer, and this is part of my college major, and then I went on to get a master's degree when my husband was stationed at Fort Campbell. He deployed, like, within a month of us getting there, and I thought, okay, I guess I'll go get a master's degree," as one does, and so I got a master's degree in literary criticism and creative writing at Austin P State University. Let's go P. And then ended up teaching for almost a decade there at the university, both in person while we were still there, and then as we moved, they were able to do online classes that I got to teach in New Hampshire and then Germany. So by the time we got to Germany, I was really missing the classroom dynamic. We'll say it that way. Literally can't imagine being a teacher right now, especially for online courses. We'll just say that. But I had always wanted to write a book. Always imagined writing, the next great American novel. And coming from a master's program that's steeped in literary criticism, you're really looking at literary fiction. And there's almost, at least when I was there, I had a wonderful program, wonderful people, but there's definitely a vibe against uh, genre fiction. And so it genuinely never occurred to me that I could write a book about, like, not misery, essentially. And then in 2016, we were in Germany and I was like, the world was heavy. And I was like, I need to read something fun. And a friend recommended romance. And I started reading and just sort of gobbled them up. I stumbled upon romantic suspense and found a lot of, like, Suzanne Brockman has this great series, The Troubleshooters, and they're all like Navy SEALs and Delta Force, and they're all special operations dudes, and that sort of kind of whet my palate for, like, I love a military hero. I literally married one, but there were no, as I lovingly call them, average Joes. Um, and so I was like, "Where's the average Joe love story where it's not like foil the plot to murder the president, it's this guy's living his life and this girl tries to figure out how to do that with him and they figure it out, you know?" So I wrote it. Um, that was a slippery slope because I wrote one and instantly had all the other characters for the series pop up on the page, and I was like, "Oh, I guess this is gonna be a series." And I was sort of, I don't know, but so many of my friends are so much more strategic than I was, but I just wrote because I love writing and it seemed fun, and then I realized, "Oh, this really is fun and joyful, and it doesn't have to be miserable." Not to say that all literary fiction is miserable, but it just is a very different tone, and it was one that I loved, and I thought, "Why am I not writing this? What would keep me from doing that?" So I did.
Oh my goodness. I This is so cool. Um, I just so appreciate like your mind and how you navigate these things too. And I love that as you started writing, you're like, oh, and whoops, here's a whole series that I've like kind of mapped out in terms of characters and the way that goes. Like I think that's so fun. And I've always been curious with authors, like when you start writing, do you think like, oh man, it'd be so fun to do this later on? And you're like, wait, let me finish the story that I have right here, and then we'll take that on. But I think that's so fun. It's so fun and so amazing. And I also appreciate that you have this background in literary criticism. I think that as I've been reading your writing style and appreciating just the stories that you have, I think you can tell that you have those experiences because so part of my active duty background, actually, a large part of it was I was like a support for special operations. So the
Oh,
amount of
nice.
times I read something and I'm like, that character was definitely, and not meaning to be like derogatory in any way, but like that was written by a woman. They do not sound like that, or like that is not a real man. And I was just like, I'm like, this is nice, but like, no, I don't know a single guy. And these are wonderful people who I have like wonderful friendships with. And I was like, they would never say that. They would never do that thing. And I'm like, what is happening right now? So I just really appreciate like the characters and how you write. And so I think it's just fun to kind of dive into that.
That is challenging, and there's definitely still, I am writing fiction.
Yeah.
So, as
Yeah.
much as I do feel sort of a less and less the further I go, the more books I write. In the first series, I felt, like, genuinely burdened to be, like, reflective of real military life as much as I could with
Sure.
as much still, like, squishy feelings as you could get. Um I feel that less and less. I guess we'll say just the more stories I write, but
Mhm.
I do find that, I don't use a lot of, like, harsh language and things like that, so that's another funny sort of dynamic where, um and one of my good friends, Jess Masterakos, her husband is a veteran Marine, and she wrote Marine romance is not a swear word in sight in that series, and we often
Hilarious.
joke about that, right? If
Nice.
you know a Marine, you love a Marine, and, you know that that's not the reality,
Yeah.
language-wise, but
It was funny. I used to be married to a Marine, and I remember going to his unit, and this is right before I commissioned into the Air Force. So I was like Mrs. Erskine back then, and we'd have these young Marines and just the creative abilities of what they were able to do with the English language. That was impressive.
mhm. Yeah, the flexibility of certain
I was
four-letter
like,
words is
oh,
amazing.
that's different. That's new. Cute.
Right.
Was there a moment where you knew this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm just loving this?
Um, Gosh, I don't know that, the sort of providential calling feeling has ever hit so much as I think especially as I get older, I don't think there's just one thing. Um, so part of it is that I feel more secure that this is a valuable use of my time, and I have struggled with that along the way. When you serve or when you're a spouse, like you have friends doing incredible things in the medical field, or writing stories about people falling in love can feel a little inconsequential. And in the scheme of things, frankly, it is. At the same time, as the world has gotten heavier, to put it lightly, in the last 6-ish years, I think I've been able to see the value in sort of an escape hatch and a place where people can sort of relax and experience joy and hope and, you know, some swoony business, and I think that I've recognized the value of it in my own life. My constant need to rewatch Parks and Rec. There's a reason for that. It's a safe, happy place. Me and Leslie know for friends, and I love reading romance, and so I think I've recognized that, and I've had wonderful readers reach out and say things that have made me realize, insane things like I was reading your book at my mother's deathbed, and that it got me through that week, and things like that, where I'm like, okay, wow, like could have been anybody's book, but I'm honored that it was mine and that it brought them some sense of relief and hope and just an escape from the heaviness. So I think I lost my train of thought. Oh, the calling. So I do feel like this is a place that fits exactly where I am. And it also happens to work really well with the fact that I am not in a place for any amount of time. We are at the whims of the army, and I have 3 children, and so there's a lot of flexibility, and that's really valuable, especially coming from academia where that is not particularly flexible. So, and I do feel like I don't know, I don't wanna say, like, my gifts as an author, but, like, my one of my things I do well, believe it or not, based on this fumbling response, is communicate, written and spoken. And so I think that this draws in some of the themes and threads that have kind of run through my life. It's cool to see them kind of come together in this. So I don't know if that actually answered your question.
It did. I just thought that was beautifully worded. I know you're like, "Oh, I'm fumbling." Like, no, not at all. I could resonate with it. I know, and funnily enough, like when we started this episode and I was saying, "Oh, like, yeah, Ginger, connected us and this is so amazing." But one of the things was when I was separating from the Air Force, like I was reestablishing what my identity was outside of Captain Shadow. I was like, "Who is Kim?" And as I moved to Utah, I just started to like fall in love with romance books. And I kind of had that same thing where I'm like, oh, I need to have the great American read. I need to read these weighty books where these plots are tearing me apart and making me think critically, and I was like, I love that idea of an escape hatch because for me, I'm like, no, my entire life is heavy. Like every aspect of this is already existing and heavy. And I in case people don't know, I am a defense contractor. I work with nuclear weapons. Like my whole life is
Mhm.
heavy. And so I was just like, I want something that different ranges of, like, palatability to be like, "I'm just enjoying this." And then I was also a single person at the time too, so it was just nice to be like, "Oh, instead of navigating the atrocities of dating culture, you can just be like, 'Hey, this is just a lovely relationship in a moment,' like, just like this pocket of nice, and I can move on to the next one." And I also found that for many women, as they're getting discouraged, I think they lean into romance because it's just a nice not only is like a temporary weight lifted, but it's also a good reminder of like, hey, this is these whether fictional or not, like these are the attributes that I'm hoping to find in a romantic partner and it's nice. And so I think there's so much value in these types of genre romance and tropes and just having a moment where you just get to enjoy something because it brings you joy.
Yeah, yeah, and to stop scrolling, which is hard these
Mhm.
days because the news is ever, it's always happening, and so I think get taking a moment away to just focus on something else, that's also good for our brains as well as our hearts, so
Yeah, exactly. Okay. For those who are big fans of you, what does a typical day in the life of Claire Kane look like right now?
oh, well, it's incredibly glamorous,
I'm sure it is.
yeah, I wake up at 5:45 because my kid gets on the bus at 6:30. So we get her on the bus, and then, I usually write before my other 2 wake up at usually 8. Um, and I also, check my email and get sucked in there, and so writing is, to varying degrees. Then, I get the kids on the bus. Their school starts really late, so they don't actually get on the bus till just before 9, which is crazy. And then I exercise, clean up, and then every day that I don't have, like, a different schedule, which is most days, I host a writing sprint, for fellow some of my close author friends from 10:30 to 11:30. And we chat for 5 minutes, we sprint for 25, we chat for 5 minutes, we sprint for 25. And it's great because I usually can hit my word count for the day. And then after that, if I have any errands, I try to get those done, have lunch. My husband is on a job right now where he can come home for lunch. So actually get to like have an adult conversation without children ear hustling in the corner, which is really good right now as we work out like PCS details. We've got a move coming up and stuff like that. And then when he goes back to work, I either if I'm in like a really heavy drafting phase, I'll go back to writing and do some more writing to hit whatever word count if I haven't fit it yet, or I do any of the other tasks allotted to an author, such as myself, who is indie published, which means marketing, budget stuff, checking in with my VA. Right now, I'm running a sale. And so if I have any new orders coming in, signing those, packaging them, just all the really exciting stuff. Um, and then my kids get off the bus at 4:20. And so that's it. And then we do afternoon soccer dinner, and then when they go to bed around 8, I go back to work and do more usually, like, marketing or small there's so many little tiny nitpicky things. So those evening things are usually stuff I do while my husband and I watch TV for an hour. So they're the mindless tasks, like getting new ISBN numbers for a book or, I try to do graphics, but if you see my Instagram, you'll know, like, that is not my forte. So I just do whatever and like, forgive me, I'll write the book, you make up the graphics in your brain. Um, and then we do it over again the next day. So
I love it. I love how I think it's very realistic and you're like authors essentially are like entrepreneurs. You are responsible for your own business management. So it's like, how do I incorporate that within intentionally, but also in the fringe hours of your day to be like, okay, I am my own marketing team. I am, logistics. I am product resourcing, like all of these things. And so, yeah, my goodness, as you're listing them off, I'm about to graduate with my MBA this weekend. So I've just been in the world of
Oh, nice. Congrats.
thank you. But I'm just like, gosh, that is so much to take on. Like props to you. I'm snapping over here. Get it. Good
Well,
job.
thank you. I don't do it all well, and I think that's something that I mean, it'll be 7 years. Is that right? Yeah, 7 years in October since I published my first book, and there
Mhm.
are so many things, so many ways that I've grown, but I also see the places where I just resist. I just resist. And the biggest category of that is marketing. Um,
Okay.
But yeah, I have learned a lot, and it was very overwhelming in the beginning, and it is not something you realize when you start out as an indie author. But really, even as a trad author now, they're responsible for so much marketing, and,
Mhm.
that it's really you don't realize that you are becoming a marketer if you want to sell your
Okay.
books. If you just wanna write a book, write that book. But if you want
Mhm.
to sell that book, if you want people to actually get eyes on it, um, it's a lot of work. It is.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I like work in marketing and I do this for both the government, I do this for other like nonprofits. And by the time I get to mine with, oh my goodness, sorry. I had a
never
feeling I was
apologize for a
like,
cat cameo.
I just had that's Massimo. He's given too much freedom, y'all. Too much freedom. He's like, I'm the favorite.
For the right
Um,
amount.
I know, he's just like, "Let me leave into the area that you absolutely need right now." I thought it was gonna be my lap and I was just gonna push him down. No, he chose violence. Okay. But yeah, no, I totally get that. So when it comes to, like, my own personal things, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, it's a full-time job to be like, what is my brand and how am I approaching this?" And I do just a lot in the community here, a lot with pageantry, and I'm just like, "Woof." It is so much work. So I'm just oh, goodness. So props to you. That bottom line props to you.
Thank you, likewise, because you seem to like you're doing a great job. I don't know anything about pageants, but it seems like you're very successful, so
Thank you. I
good
appreciate
work.
So what draws you to telling military love stories versus other genres?
Um, well, to be fair, I do have, I think, 6 or 8 non-veteran or active duty heroes, just to give them, but that's, you know, a small percentage of my catalog ultimately. I think I have 36-ish books. I don't know exactly. So it's a 30-ish books with hero active duty or veterans. I think because ultimately that's the culture I'm in. That's the life I chose, and we can debate on another episode the whole you knew what you were getting into situation, but um I think find it compelling. As you know better than I do, there is a very small percentage of people in the country who actually choose to serve. And I am not one of them. I'm not. I didn't sign up. I literally couldn't do what my husband does. Do not take the things he deals with well. I'm happy to be the spouse. And it's my great honor because I get to stand next to someone that I'm genuinely proud of and believe in and who respects me and supports me and loves me very well. So and whose job gives us insurance, so I can be an indie author, and it's a little bit less stress than if I were to do that, right? So there's a lot of privilege in there. And but ultimately, I think for the heroes, I find it compelling when someone has done something for not themselves. And while certainly not everyone gets into the military for altruistic reasons, um, I am writing fiction, and so that that is that is something I enjoy reflecting. I also like, you know, some of the most wonderful people I've ever met have been fellow military spouses, and some of our best friends all over the world now are military families. And so while I don't only write active duty, what I do try to reflect in like my small town romances is that sense of a found family, which is such a huge part of military life. And if you ever get stationed in a place where you don't have that, you really feel it. And if you do have it, it's just the best thing. And so that's another aspect that I like about writing military romance is it allows me to fold that found family in a way that feels very obvious to me because it's been my life for the last 17 years.
I think that aspect of it is, like, incredibly lovely. I I will say when I transitioned out of the military, that was something that I think I still do honestly, like, struggle a little bit with because you would move to a duty station and we have these ongoing jokes about you turn to your neighbor who you've just met and you're like, "Do you wanna be my emergency contact?" But you just get it, you know? And, like, it's just there's so many areas where there's just an understanding, and maybe it's assumptions but you just live the life that you just get it. And so when I hear things in, like, civilian populations of, like, people not showing up or not being there for your neighbor, I have just, like, the hardest time understanding that. And I'm also a little bit spoiled here. I live in an elderly neighborhood. It is amazing, but they care so much about me, and I don't think many of them have any military affiliation. So I was very blessed to, like, kinda rotate into a very niche culture here too. But it was amazing because I can't understand not being supportive of other people. And so, um, I love that you incorporate that into your stories too.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely a joy, and I think it's something that my readers look for. At this point, they know that there's gonna be a strong sense of found family, so
Yeah,
happy to provide it.
I love it. I love it. And maybe you've reflected on this a little bit already, but what do people often misunderstand about military relationships that you try to capture in your books?
Ooh, that's tricky. I think I can only speak for what I'm doing because I think there are a lot of misunderstandings about military relationships. That could really be its own conversation. I think one thing I aim for is to first of all, I don't ever write a deployment. Like my heroes are not about to leave on a deployment. One thing that I started with was occasionally there is a potential for a deployment. I will caveat that in the very first series. But one thing that was important to me coming out of a very stressful time with multiple wars and everyone around me absolutely wrung out from the various wars that they all, signed up right in a row for, was not focusing on that because as a spouse, I was like, I don't have the heart to read that. Like I literally cannot read a book that includes deployment trauma, that the soldier died and his best friend is now going to take care. Nope, nope, not on my list. So I'm not going to write that either. But there's obviously a toll paid by our service members and families. And so I usually when I'm addressing heavier things, like particularly the first series, I have a book that particularly addresses active duty member suicide, and then I have okay, he can be in it. He's welcome. um, and then I have like somebody lost their best friend and things like that. So it's not that I'm ignoring that that exists, but I don't generally put it on page, and I try to allow time to have elapsed so that because to me, one thing I don't love, and especially I think the older I get, I'm really uninterested in a romance where the people are like super broken and trying to patch themselves up together by falling in love and as though that will solve all their problems. So my heroes go to therapy. They use their words. They do not hurt people. When they hear that a woman has been wronged, they don't like get angry and punch a hole in the wall. They're like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And so some of that is less sexy, admittedly, but like that's just kind of my jam. I mean, of course, I do say like my slogan is small towns and protective heroes. They are protective, but they are not possessive. They are not PTSD, broken and incapable of love until this one woman comes along. Like that that's not the stories that I'm writing. And I that's not to criticize anyone who is or anyone who enjoys those, but like military spouse for 17 years, active duty. I don't 4 or 5 deployments, like, we that's real life, right? So that's not fun to me. I don't wanna go live there for 90,000 words. So so it's gotta be a little lighter for me. I do have occasionally I have, like, the last book in my veteran series has, a hero who has really struggled mental health-wise, and his story starts right as he's sort of coming out of 7 years of really intensive therapy, self-care, like, rebuilding his life. Um, and that's a choice that I'm making, for the tone of my book. But it doesn't not address the things, it's just I'm able to do it in a lighter way, and oh my gosh, I feel like I strayed really far from the question. Um, wise, I'm not sure that I'm doing a great job of that lately because I'm not really writing active duty, and I don't know what it's like to be married to a veteran who's a civilian. I've never done that before. So I can imagine it, obviously. And I do try to take things that affected them from their time in service, especially usually I write like retired veterans. So they spent 20 years in and now they're grizzled and jaded and coming out at, 40 or whatever. But I don't know that I'm nailing that as much as just trying to show what one possible fictional version of it looks like with each.
And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I truly appreciate your writing style. I think that I'm very similar in the sense that um, I've lived through those lives and relationships. I've seen that. I've seen it impact other people's marriages and lives and relationship dynamics and families. And yeah, I would agree. For 90,000 words, I don't want to live there. I don't want to sit in that place. And there's also the reality of it where a lot of times like those relationships aren't healed. They end up broken. And so I think that people who are seeking your stories and your style of writing are looking for a really specific experience to like walk through, and like the small town protective characters, they're looking for that versus like let's read through a lot of brokenness and we're fingers crossed everything works out. I was just like, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for from the day to day. And so I appreciate you touching upon that and kind of explaining like some of the background and the choices with that for sure. Okay, now this is some of my favorite questions right now. Okay, do your characters come to you first or the storyline?
Definitely characters.
Okay.
Yeah, usually I have a sense of where a series starts, and
Mhm.
then the other characters just show up as I write.
Oh,
Um, and sometimes they show up in a given series, and they don't get a book until many series later. So there are quite a few characters in my world because all of my series connect. They're all in the same Claire Kane world, that readers are real mad that they haven't gotten to see, but they're not ready yet. They're still cooking. They're still maturing and working through their garbage so they can be a good hero.
I love it. We're only introducing them to the plot when they're ready. We're not
Right.
doing half-baked heroes for sure.
Correct. Correct. No raw chicken.
Exactly. Ooh, I love that. We used to say that with dating. We're like, our husbands are out there, but he's half-baked. We need to make sure he's fully cooked.
Fully roasted. Yep.
Exactly. Let me see here. Are any of your characters inspired by real people or experiences?
Ooh, I feel like I'm sure some are, but they morph once they become part of the story. I will say that the second book I ever wrote, the hero is Jake, and he was loosely inspired by a guy that I remember seeing in a combatives tournament way back when. I love combatives. Like, sign me up. I will watch every single round forever. And there's always the dudes that are super good at it, and there are often women, but especially 17 years ago, there were not women who were like going all the way where we were. And I just thought it was so cool. I just loved it. And so that hero is like a combatives expert. That is not the gist of the story, but that is the only one that I can specifically think of that I do remember being like, "Oh, I like that." Oh, actually, that's not true. When I was in Germany, I worked at the education center on post, and I did language testing. So I remember this particular person coming in and he tested for like 3 different languages over the course of like a week and a half. And it was very impressive because he scored 4s and 5s. I mean, or maybe straight 5s. I don't know. He just was clearly like a native French speaker, and then he spoke like Tagalog, and then he spoke Farsi or something, like Nazi languages. And I just remember being like, that is super cool. And I love languages and I always have. And so my character, um, Ryan West, he has his own book and he shows up in a book at the Ed Center, and you see that, and then later he gets his own book, and he's supposed to be like a language expert, and he is special operations. I did end up going that route for some stuff because we kind of ended up in that world, so, yeah, of course.
I love it though. Like that was one of my favorite things is like reading like, oh, she writes special operations. And I just again, you'll hear it throughout the entire podcast episode. I like Claire Cain and her writing style, everybody. So it works out lovely. But so when I worked with special operations though, I thought because they deployed to wow, I can't talk to specific geographic regions. So they learn languages per those regions. And my specialty area is like Indo-Pacific. I'm also Filipino. So I was stationed in South Korea and learning all about this from them. And they were so, so funny because they do have to maintain a certain level of proficiency, but, like, I thought, like, these guys could just, like, bust out, like, "You're gonna do Mandarin Chinese," and I'm like, "Yeah, like, lay it out there, like, let's see what you got," and they're like, "Barely, Kim, barely." Like, I can
Mhm.
communicate, but, like, it is not I wouldn't be like, "Yeah, this is what's gonna hop on my dating profile," kinda thing. Like, they're like, "No, no, no." But I was
Yeah,
just like,
perfect.
"That's so cool that you can, like, speak multiple languages," and they're like, "Sort of, it is," and I'm just like, "Oh, love it, so cool." Okay. Let's see. What makes a strong female lead in your eyes?
Oh, that's a good question. I think to me what that looks like is sometimes they know this at the beginning, but a lot of times that's part of their arc, right? Their character arc is figuring out what they actually want, not what they think they should want. Because I think particularly women get caught up in what they should want. Either I should want this career, or I should want a family, or I shouldn't want a family. I should want my career first, or it's too young, or I'm too old, or whatever to want these things, or this isn't realistic. And so to me, getting to the heart of what a person actually wants is is part of it. I think being able to use her voice is a key feature, and that obviously shows up in a lot of different ways, right? Because that doesn't always mean someone who's, you know, vociferous and excitable and chatty. And I also think someone who is willing to be vulnerable because I I think one thing that happens in military communities, and particularly with at least female military spouses, is that there's this dumb sense that we should have it all together and we don't. We should be able to manage everything and not ask for help because we knew what we were signing up for and we chose this life, and especially if you've been doing it for half a second, it's like, you know how to do this, you can handle this. And that is just garbage. It's just garbage. And so to me, I my people usually have a moment where they have to ask for help. Not everyone has a hard time asking for help, right? But I find that compelling, whether hero or heroine has to come to a place where they have to verbalize the need for help and then be willing to accept it. That occurs a lot in my plots, maybe as a way for me to work out my own angst about asking for help. I don't know. But I think some of that just willingness to sort of, I think that's often a growth arc is figuring out what you want and figuring out how to say it. And sometimes that I need help, and sometimes that I don't want this, and sometimes that actually I do want a family or I do want a spouse, but I don't know how to get there. I mean, obviously, in a romance, that's going to happen for you, but um, and then usually they need a friend. They need a strong female friend who's going to support them and cheer for them and lift them up and sort of surprise them with, you know, unconditional love. Because a lot of times that's a theme in my books is sort of a character in the book demonstrating unconditional love to someone who hasn't experienced it. And sometimes that's the romantic dynamic. Usually that's there, but a lot of times there's the found family friendship group who also provides that sort of steady thing. So sometimes the strong female character is the one supporting. Um, so that was long winded.
No, I like it. I think it's incredibly relatable, especially from my perspective of being a woman officer in the Air Force. Like the questions that you're asking are things that women ask all the time. Like I remember conversations about like, can I talk to my career field manager? Like women asking, I have not been able to successfully meet anybody, and I keep being sent on like short tours or deployments. And she's like, I want to have a family. Like I want to get married. I want these things. Like, can I get a normal assignment so I can like have a shot at trying to meet someone? And those are
Imagine.
very real experiences. And I think especially those who might not be familiar with the military, you might not even think like, oh yeah, here's a young person or any person who just this is a goal. This is something that they'd like to see. And yeah, the military is and going back to your point when people are like, well, you signed up for this, you knew what you were signing up for. I'm always like, yeah, at 18 years old, you knew a 20-year career what it was gonna be like later on. No, no, you did not. There's no way that you had the comprehension at 18 to understand, or even 21, whenever you went into the service, that like, yes, this is what the experience is gonna look like. Sure, you might have had ideas, but I even came from a giant military family, predominantly Navy, and I still didn't know like this thing. So I was just like, yeah, like you can put forth your best effort, but I get so exasperated when people say that. And I was like, yeah, because like let's have some realistic expectations in terms of how people handle life, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of male lead resonates most with your readers?
Ooh. Um, I know they love a grumpy hero. Uh, that's kind of a classic, but they do love a grump. There's always a grump in every series. I have a grump because I love a grumpy hero. But they love a protective hero. I think that's the one of the biggest things. They will ride with me through, a golden retriever, happy go lucky, which is generally not the most popular. And there are some people who won't read those at all, which is interesting to me. I also have had a few, well, yeah, that's a different conversation, but I do think, they like the protective element. They want to see the hero, want to keep the heroine safe, but they definitely don't want the heroine to, like, act like she needs that, you know? You don't want a doormat. And then I also think I tend to write he falls first, which is where the hero likes the woman first, and that is just what I like, so that's, like, the most fun. A lot of times, my editor has to come to me and be like, "Claire, he's too far in too soon," and I'm like, "But are you sure? Do we really know that?" So, that I often I mean, I can't tell you how many books I have, like, shot the sail on and just ruined because he's just head over heels and there's no reason they can't be together, and I'm like, "Well, it's done." She's like, "No." Thank God for her, but, um, so, yeah, I think protective um, and totally head over heels.
No complaints. You're just audibly confirming all the things. I was like, "Yeah, that tracks. I like that. I like that a lot." Um, um, what role does resilience play in both your characters and, I suppose, real life relationships?
Mm. Well, that's a resilience is a word that we love to toss at military families and children, especially for some reason. It's like, oh, military kids are resilient. But lately there's been more dialogue about the fact that resilience comes from having to be resilient. You don't just wake up and you're resilient. You build resilience by doing really hard things repeatedly over time. And so that is absolutely true. I don't know that I'm particularly resilient, but I'm still standing and I'm still sticking with my dude. My kids are incredible, but that doesn't mean it's not like incredibly challenging for them. I mean, we're facing an international move, and they're all so excited, but they're also really sad. And so, asking 6, 11, and 13-year-olds to hold that intention because that's what life is to them, like, that's huge and, hard. hard as a parent, I imagine harder as a kid because you have no perspective on anything but what you've lived so far, you know? So they're all getting older so they can remember, arriving here to Virginia and building that resilience through some pretty hard things. And so in my books, I think I tend to write people, often the heroine, but at least one of the characters is coming from a very hard place, usually. And usually there's a little bit of passage of time for the hardest thing because again, I don't necessarily want my people walking into a relationship right after some traumatic event or horrible breakup from an abusive partner, which does show up in my books a lot because I care a lot about domestic violence issues. I have a lot of people who I really love who have experienced that. So that's an important thing that does recur in my books. But I think resilience is one thing that makes people really interesting, especially when they've been through hard things. And because I'm writing characters who are fully grown adults, they've been through hard things. They've lived life. They've been through hard relationships, or they've finally dealt with their childhood trauma, or they've been in the military and seen hard things, or just never got to put down roots repeatedly. And now they're like, wait, here I am out. And how do I do this? So I think that's I guess. I've never really thought about it that way, but I think that's actually kind of a key feature of where my characters end up.
I'm just so enjoying this. Thank you. I like loved every single answer. I'm like, "Oh yes, yes, I love this." Um, have you ever written a scene that emotionally impacted you more than you expected?
I'm a crier, so yeah, I make myself cry probably at least once a book. I will say even my last rom-com, I have one series of Christmas, marriage of convenience, active duty military romance rom-coms. And even the most recent one, it was, like, a little bit heavier, and I made myself cry in that one. Usually in my main series, there is a point at which I cry. And I'm not sure I make my readers cry necessarily. Some of the books I know I have. Some of the books I can tell, like, "Oh, this is gonna get them," especially if they're later in the series. There's usually a character who's kind of an unknown that we have questions about, and I always save him for the end. It's always a he, it's always one of the heroes. And so in my most recently completed series, Dorian is the hero that everyone was sort of like, "What's going on with Dorian?" And I cried multiple times in that book. But even I mean, yes, I have the book that I just finished, which is with my editor right now, Found in Wild Sage. It comes out in August, and that one snuck up on me. I didn't know that it was going to make me cry, but it sure did. I mean, like destroyed me. I even messaged Brendan was like, "I'm literally sitting here sobbing and I cannot recover." It maybe hit on some personal themes, but yeah, so I think it's not necessarily that I'm such an amazing writer, it's that I am in it. I'm not detached from this. I'm right here with my characters, and that's as much as I don't love to, like, have an end of the world cry, I usually know, like, okay, that's gonna be a solid scene because I'm in it. Um, so anytime even sometimes I laugh at myself because I think I'm funny, and I'm not generally writing rom-coms. I don't particularly write super funny stuff, but when I'm in it like that, when I have an emotional response, I can usually tell, like, okay, this is going really well. Which is not all the time. Sometimes there is always a point in every book where I think no one should read this ever. It should go straight to a dumpster and be lit on fire. And that is, 37, 38, whatever number of book I'm on, that has happened with every single book. I save one. So,
Wow, that is amazing perspective. I would never think that, like, especially someone who enjoys your work, that you'd be like, "Nope, trash, be gone, delete you from the earth."
absolutely.
But I'm so glad that you persevered and shared that with us because then now we have these amazing stories and characters and things that bring us joy in our everyday life, and especially in a world that feels heavy. So I'm glad that you didn't throw them away.
Me too, in the end. In the end.
Is there a character that you absolutely adore?
I, people always say this is like asking for a favorite child, and feel that quite attached, but also I do because I don't know. I do have favorites. I will say I loved Dove. Dove is a heroine in the last book in Anything for You. Um, that is the only book that I have written that I was like, this isn't garbage. I wrote it purely I wrote that book the way I wanted to write it for basically myself and my friend Jenny Carrick, who is also an amazing, amazing author. And I basically wrote it for us. I wrote exactly what we would want to happen. And luckily readers were satisfied. Um, but yeah, I have really enjoyed Declan. I just wrote him. He's the second Ryan brother. Um, I really I have a particular love for Kenny in the veteran series that he's the golden retriever, and he's just the sweetest, most golden retriever I've ever written. Um, I loved Jonas Bauer, who is not he's a military child and his father is German and his mother is American. And that is probably one of that's my absolutely my least read series, my least popular series. It was my first small town romance, and, he swears in German, but German expressions are so funny, so there's, like, a key for his expletives. They're, like, "by Thord's blonde beard." Like, I got these from actual German friends. So I just had so much fun with that, and he's very intense, and he's, like, low-key obsessed with the heroine, but they aren't enemies to lovers, and I've only written 2 of those, so I loved that, yeah. So, yeah, I could probably pick through and tell you, like, favorites from each, but those are probably the top.
I feel like you're gonna make so many people so giddy with that information, so I'm really I was just over here like, "Yes, yes." But
Okay.
what has been your biggest pinch me moment so far?
I mean, I'm not fancy and I don't go places, but I think, in the fall, I did a signing with Romance Landia bookstore in Maryland. It's, I think, still Maryland's only romance only bookstore, and Stacy runs an amazing author signing full weekend event for books called Ink and Envy. Look it up if you're in the area. It's absolutely worth the trip. But, I had a reader who I sort of interact with occasionally on Instagram, who's, just so lovely. She had ordered some books directly through me, and she and her entire family drove, like, 6 hours to come meet me and my, fellow author friends and, like, surprised us, and, like, that was one of those moments where I was like and she was like, "This is for my birthday." My husband like, their kids were just waiting in the car, and so, that was one of those things where I was like, "Whoa." And then I just had a lovely reader send me a sweatshirt, um, with all the heroes, and I was just like, "This is just, like, you just sent me merch of my own characters, and it's amazing." So those have been really fun, but I honestly think I will never forget, that the one about one of my awesome readers who actually is my sort of alpha reader. She reads before all of my beta readers usually, or actually, she's like my advanced ARC reader. She reads through the final copy before I send it out to all. Susan, also in Utah. Um, she wrote me a really lovely note after going through a really hard time, and it's things like that too that are sort of like, this is why I do this job. I mean, obviously, I love to write, and I like to talk to people about books, and especially my own books because that's real. But a thing I made, you want to talk about it? Yes. But knowing that it has actually helped someone in some way, whether it's just lighten their load or given them, something to grab onto, that is absolutely the, the butter. So,
Oh, that's so lovely. That just brought me so much happiness and joy. Thank you so much for sharing, and for being on my podcast today. I'm so excited for our event this Sunday. I'm like giddy. I can't wait.
me too.
It's going to be so much fun, and I'm hoping that we have a great turnout. For those listening, this podcast episode is coming out in advance, so come see us on Sunday. Come meet us for fun. I clap and I'm super giddy and excited all the time, but it's Claire Cain, so be excited with me. Um, but with that being said, we're going to transition into how we end the highly favored podcast episodes, and that's with our lights. So we have red lights and green lights. Red lights are things that you do not advocate for. You're like, thumbs down, I do not like this. Green lights are the opposite, things that you do like. So, what are some red lights and green lights in your life right now?
Oh, green light, skinny pop popcorn. This is my favorite thing. Red light to the name, green light to the experience of eating it. Um, Green light to reading whatever you want and not worrying about people telling you what you should be reading. Uh, Red light to telling other people what they should be reading or should not be reading. I should be doing this faster, I know. I should have thought of these before. I'm sorry. Um, Green light to wearing what you wanna wear. Green light to, uh, being vulnerable and silly and not taking yourself too seriously. Red light to toxic masculinity and having to not do certain things because it's not manly enough. Um, I don't know. Am I on the right track here?
You can take it on whatever track you want to. This is lovely. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Background.
Okay. I'll end by saying, green light to getting outside and getting some fresh air and drinking your water
Oh, yeah.
because if you don't have someone to tell you, I'm gonna remind you, take a sip of water.
Mhm. Oh, no, absolutely. We're basically plants. Go outside, enjoy the sunshine, get some water.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for being on the Highly Favored podcast. I am thrilled to have you on here, but also to see you on Sunday. I am already budgeting to spend quite a bit of money on signed books. So get ready. I am so
Excellent.
excited. But
I'm
thank you
super
so much for
excited.
your time and sharing all your perspective and experiences. I can't wait for people to be able to meet you on Sunday.
Thank you. Thanks.